Welcome to Business Amplified with host Kevin A. Dunlap.
This podcast is for small business owners aiming to amplify their enterprises.
Explore strategies to play a bigger game by becoming an author, public speaker, podcast host, or expanding your brand in other ways.
Elevate your business on Business Amplified.
Well, hello, everybody. This is Kevin Dunlap with Business Amplified. And today we're going to be talking with a gentleman all the way coming from Singapore. So as you guys may have known, we've been traveling all over the world. Singapore is another country that we're very interested in being in. So we have a gentleman by the name of, I would assume his name is pronounced Callum. So if Callum, if that's not how you pronounce your name, please correct me and welcome to the show.
Great to be here, Kevin. I'm looking forward to it.
Well, Callum, tell us and tell our viewers and our listeners, what is it that you do, or who are you? What is it that you do, and why is it that you do it?
Okay. So for the last 25 years, I've been an entrepreneur, starting, building, ultimately buying and selling businesses. And in the last 10 years, I've really focused on helping small businesses to use the capital markets. So taken over 100 companies public through various vehicles using M&A, mergers and acquisitions structures. And then I still keep building companies on the side as well. So I have a business I started about 18 months ago to help women, minorities, and first timers to get their first board seats. Which is going incredibly well. And we place people all over the world and train them up on how to be great board members. And yeah, written a few books along the way, has share my knowledge with people that are up and coming, and hopefully they can avoid some of the many mistakes I've made along the way.
So let's actually talk about some of your books, if you don't mind, because one of the things I do talk with people, and one of the purposes for this show is for people to become the authority in their business. In my opinion, they should become an author, and to my understanding, the word author is derived from the word authority. So by becoming an author and assuming you write good content, you automatically become the authority in that area, in that space. So could you tell us a little bit about maybe some of your first books that you wrote, and what process did you go through in writing those books?
Sure. So I've written 4 books now. The first one, all of them, well, the last one is coming out as we speak. But the first 3 have all been business bestsellers, which is nice. For me, writing a book is obviously, it's a great way to build your profile. It's a great way to add value to the community and to share your knowledge. But I think even more than that, it's a very good way to clarify your own thinking, especially if you're kind of an entrepreneur, if you're building things. We get very caught up in what we're doing, and we kind of intuitively know things after we've done it for a while, but it's only when you actually try and get those ideas out in an articulate way that other people can follow that you really get clarity. And it's also, I find the process of writing it reinforces a lot of things that I've done that I think, why have I stopped doing that? That was actually really good. So the first book I wrote was called Progressive Partnerships. That was probably 7 or odd years ago. Still sells incredibly well. And that was really about how small businesses can partner with other companies to grow exponentially faster than if you try and do it organically, and how you focus on adding value to other companies, and a lot about how you build your own personal network as well, how important it is to create so much value that people want to be in your network. The next couple of books, Agglomerate and Entrepreneurial Investing, were much more sort of around the mergers and acquisitions and public markets space. So less kind of consumer, more sort of deep, dark investor space. And then this last book that I've written, Boardroom Blueprint, is very much designed for anyone that's in any position of management or leadership that thinks maybe one day they'd want to sit on a board of directors, but they probably don't even know what that is or how you go about doing it. And I show a very easy process that you can use to sit on the boards of multiple companies and do an excellent job for them. So my writing style is very relaxed because I'm quite laid back anyway. So it's a very relaxed but easy to read book, full of great stories about people that have followed the process and got great results.
Okay. And when you're writing your first book, did you like have a coach, or did you follow a style? And why did you write that first book? Because I know I'm also a 4 times author myself. And when I
Cool.
wrote my first book back in 2015, I wanted to write a book just to, number one, just to say, hey, I'm an author. I mean, that was the first thing. And that first book has nothing to do with what I do now, so I don't really promote it that much, even though it does sell very well in the UK for whatever reason. And it's back when I was in real estate. It was called Lease Options Made Easy. So lease options is a type of acquisition of real estate where you don't have to buy the home, you're buying the right to buy them. And that whole book was about that. And I
Mhm.
use that as a way to get on stages at different real estate investment clubs and things along those lines. That gave me the authority to speak on those stages. So, and why is it that you wrote your first book, and what process did you use to write it?
Um, so a lot of people kind of assume that you make money from selling books, and that's
You know,
not the case at all. So yeah, I recognized very early on that you can make $1 selling a book on Amazon, or you can make $5,000 or $10,000 as a speaker at a conference because you've written a book. So that's a much better equation. I wrote the book because at the time I had launched a business in Asia for a good friend of mine, Daniel Priestley, called Key Person of Influence, which was a training program to help people become key people of influence in their industry. And one of the things that we teach is, a great way to become an authority is to get published. And so we would kind of do these. We did a 30-day, try and do 1,000 words a day for 30 days, and there's a group of 20 people doing it, so they're all kind of geeing each other up, and then I thought, well, if I'm telling them to do it, I kind of have to do it myself. So I did that, and that first 30 days, it's not good content. It's just kind of like stream of conscious. It's just getting it all out onto the laptop, and then it actually probably took me about another year to filter and refine and had kind of too many ideas, and the book was sort of split all over the place, and I didn't really know what I was trying to do with it, but eventually got it into good shape. And I would say once you've done one book, it does get easier because you understand the process better, and I think you read books through a different lens because you're always kind of trying to figure out where the author's taking you and what the steps are, and how to do it in the best way so that the reader gets the most value from it. And yeah, certainly that's I think my books are getting better with age, but hopefully.
Well, and one of the things, because on my second book, I hired a book writing coach, and
Mhm.
you just said exactly basically what he was saying, and this is exactly when I write my books, and this is what I'm going to tell anybody that's listening out there or watching this video, is whenever you're writing, let's just call it your first draft of the book, that is going to be complete garbage. I mean, complete garbage. But the thing is, what you want to do, you want to get those ideas down into some format onto your laptop or onto paper, as some people call it, and then you refine it. And you refine it. You do a second draft, you do a third draft, you do a fourth draft, and that's where it comes from. So if you ever read another first-time author and you're reading their content and it's got good content, just be aware that it took me more than a year to write my second book. And it's just
Yeah.
because I was following that process. Callum just said the exact same thing. When he wrote his first book, his first version, he just said it was complete garbage. It had made no sense or what have you. But the thing is, I just want everybody to know when you're writing, becoming an author, especially a first-time author, you don't want to be the first time you write chapter 1, 2, and 3. They're not going to be good. So Don't worry about it. Finish the book, finish the first draft, and then go back in and edit it. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, totally. And I think yeah, part of it is just kind of getting clarity on your own ideas, and then you send it to a few trusted people to get their feedback on, and they say, well, yeah, I get it, but chapter 3 kind of seems completely out of place. And you go, oh yeah, that's right, I actually thought about that at the wrong time and kind of crowbarred that in, and so yes, I need to move that around. And um as you'll know, the easy bit is kind of that brain dump at the beginning, and getting all the content out there. The last 10% of the book is really the bit that takes the 90% of the work. It's the refining and the editing and the going back and forth and tidying up and getting references and all of that sort of stuff, which and by my publisher's always joking, because like she'll send over a list of questions on it and I'll send it back, and I'm always sign off with, please don't send this back to me again. I don't want to see it. I'm sick of it. Because it's just like, yeah, done. But anyway, it's good. And look, there is no better feeling. I've had something like 200 pre-reviews, 5-star pre-reviews already written and sent, and my book is about how you get a board seat. And almost every day I'm getting, just from the pre-reviewers, people writing to me and saying, hey, I've just got a board seat, I've just secured a paid board seat based on what you've written in the book. And there is no better feeling. That's absolutely awesome when that happens.
Yeah, and that was actually one of the things I wanted to ask you. After you wrote your first book and your second book, how did those books take you to where you are today? Because I mean, obviously there was a process that you went through to become, hey, I'm writing my first book on this one topic, to now I'm helping businesses get their board seats, as well as how people can be on different boards of companies.
Yeah, I don't think the books took me through that. I think I had a career path which it's always been about helping small businesses to grow and looking at different ways to help small businesses to grow. I think I've used books as a tool to amplify the work that I'm doing and to bring what we're doing to a wider audience. And so at different times of that. So if you look at the progression of the books, Progressive Partnerships, which was the first one, is very much written for startups and early stage businesses, and this is how you scale a business. The next book, Agglomerate, was really written for well-established companies that are probably doing 5 to 50 million in revenue. The founder is still running them, but is looking for what's the next step. And so Agglomerate is about how you use the public markets in a group of companies to do that. And again, that still sells well today. The third one, Entrepreneurial Investing, was very much about talking to investors, because obviously if you're putting companies into the public markets, the next piece that you have to figure out is investors, and how do you articulate what you're doing so that investors understand it. So Entrepreneurial Investing was all about helping investors to understand how entrepreneurs create value and how they can leverage that. And then, I saw an opportunity in the market, because I was sitting on so many boards and serving so many boards and hiring and firing directors. I saw an opportunity to put people that didn't have traditional boardroom experience onto boards, and how they could actually serve those boards incredibly effectively, oftentimes much better than people that had all the sort of the right qualifications. And so I set up a training company to help people to develop those skills and to go out and do it, and have got incredible results from it, just because I saw that hole in the market. And then the book is really about, okay, through that thing, that company, Veblen Directors, which I set up 18 months ago, we've got like 100 plus clients, but we've got sort of a community of 60,000 people that are in that area. But if I want to reach a broader market, I needed another tool, and the book is the tool to take it to a much wider market. So yeah, I think the books typically sort of represent where I am in my career. And after every one, I swear blind that'll be the last one I ever write. So we'll see whether that actually happens or not.
Because I know when I wrote my fourth book in 2021, that's the exact same thing that you're saying right now. Just a few years later, I'm not writing a fifth book. I'm done with writing a book. I'm going to focus on other things. But who knows? A year from now, I'm going to be saying, I really need to write a fifth book. So you just never know. But the thing is, and you're just kind of saying the same thing of the same experience that I was going through, because each book that I written was where was I at that time in my life, and then it was just to articulate and to put everything down onto page, and then we knew what's going on, which therefore became the construct of however you're doing business at that time, or possibly even later on. So the book was just a great way to put all your stuff together. And then, I mean, not only does it make you the authority, like I said earlier in the show, but it also helps you build your clarification and how you do things. Yeah, would you
Yeah.
say now?
Yeah,
Now,
no.
there's a book out there that I highly recommend to anybody that's thinking about writing their first book. It's called "Book the Business." Have you read that book, Colin?
No.
You have not? Okay. So in Book the Business, one of the things that Colin already has said is like, it says, do you want to make money from the sales of your book, or do you want to make money off your book? And basically, most book writers are not going to make that much money from the sales of their book. But the thing is that book opens doors to other opportunities, like getting on stage, or creating a program, or creating something along those lines. Would you agree with that?
Oh, totally. I mean, and the reason that I've had been approached by publishers to write for them, but it doesn't make financial sense to do that because A, I can promote my own book better than they can, and B, I actually want to give away as many copies of my book as I possibly can. So, for example, I'm speaking at a conference next week. I speak conferences all the time, but when I do, part of the deal that I set up with the organizer is that each of the attendees gets a free copy of my book, because I don't care about making 50 cents or $1 on every book. I know that they're going to read the book, they're going to want to invest in one of my companies, they're going to bring a company to me, they're going to want to join the training program, they're going to introduce me to an organization that they're a part of that might be interested. And so the returns are many times magnified than trying to flog a book for $20, of which you see $1 of it or something. It's just I much rather give them away and get them into the hands of as many people as possible. It's there's no point being the authority if only 10 people know that you're the authority. It's you want as many people as possible to know.
So going back to the book that I was just talking about, it's called Book the Business, and the subtitle is How to Make Big Money Without Selling a Single Copy. And it is all about not being greedy. So I have to make my 50 cents or $1 on this book. I'd rather give you my books, especially if it's going to be an ebook. And so there's absolutely no cost to you. But the thing is, giving away that copy, instead of saying you're talking to a conference of 100 people, you could have made $100 from the sales of your books, selling everybody with a $1 profit margin, or you give it away for free and make tens of thousands of dollars because people are investing in you and your business. So I want to make sure that everybody that's listening to this sees that somebody, just like myself, that giving away your book is probably one of the best ways to make great money from your actual book.
Yeah, I mean, as long as you've got something behind the scenes, you've actually got a business
Program or
and the
something, yes.
opportunities.
No, absolutely. So tell us a bit more about how you work with these people and helping them get onto the boards of these companies. I mean, because that's the main thing you're doing now, or is a bigger thing more is helping them to go public?
So I kind of have the core business is doing mergers and acquisitions, but I have a team that takes care of most of that. The Veblen Director Program is very interesting because it's we show people how to get themselves onto. So a lot of people kind of assume that hopefully they'll be on the board of directors in 20 years' time. Someone will tap them on the shoulder and offer them a seat. I don't really know what that means, but it sounds like a good thing to do. My argument would be, let's try and bring that forward, because the credibility that you get, you talked about the credibility that comes with publishing a book, but the credibility you get from sitting on a board is equally, if not more, valuable. Plus, there is no limit to the upside earning potential sitting on a board. Plus, you meet incredible people that are also sitting on those boards, and all of the opportunities. It's not just the salaries that you get paid for what is basically a part-time role. It's all of the business opportunities that come with that. So what we do is we help people to set up advisory boards for small companies and startups. And I think every small business should have a board of advisors. I think it's it's a free, easy way to significantly improve your business. And so our members set up those advisory boards. We show them how they can monetize that without necessarily taking money, being paid to do it, but you can there's many other ways, just like the book, there's many other ways to leverage it to earn income. And then what we do is we set up apprenticeship programs for publicly listed companies, because it's a big jump from sitting on the board of a small private company to a publicly listed company. There's lots of legal and regulations and things. So that on its own is normally too big a jump. So what we do is we create apprentice programs for publicly listed companies, and we teach our members how to go and add massive value to those boards through helping with regulatory reporting, investor relations, all the stuff that directors are terrible at doing and hate doing. Our team basically do, and they do for free. But what they're doing is they're actually leveraging the credibility of sitting as an apprentice board on that publicly listed company. They're building relationships with those directors. They're making themselves invaluable to the board, so that at the end of that year, it's a no-brainer to turn them into a paid board seat. It works incredibly well. So as long as somebody's got halfway decent leadership experience or management experience, then it's a good place for them to go and make quite a lot of money.
So if I'm understanding you correctly, you help both the business to start setting up the board, and then you also help on the other side the people, having people to come in to be part of that board.
Yeah, so one of our first rules is never apply for a board seat. The reason for that is I've always been an entrepreneur, so the idea of applying for a job just gives me the willies anyway. Let me say, I don't want HR determining my future. But equally, a board seat shouldn't really be a job application. Like, it should be a partnership discussion. But if you think about it, there's 330 million companies in the world. Less than 1% of them actually have an active board. And anyone that applies for a board seat is applying to those less than 1%. So everyone's trying to go after the same seats. Whereas you've got all the other companies that don't have boards could benefit from boards. And if you go and talk to them and you say, hey, look, I notice you don't have a board. I'm connected to some brilliant people. Let me build up this board. It's not going to cost you anything. We'll do it for a year. If you don't like it, you can get rid of us. We'll get some experience. We'll hopefully help you out. If you like it at the end of the year, great, you can hire us. If you don't like it, no problem. We've all learned something and met some cool people. And most businesses are very open to that. It's a pretty much a no-lose situation. And because you're setting it up by default, you get to sit on that board, and you get to invite other cool people to join you on that board, and now they owe you a favor. The title of the book is Boardroom Blueprint: How to Get a Board Seat Within 60 Days. And that's our target, is to get all of our members onto a board seat within 60 days. And Most of them are on at least one, sometimes two by then. We had a gentleman in the US who had watched one of my webinars on the topic, and he reached out to me. He said, look, this sounds fantastic, but I'm retired. I'm 70 years old. I think I'm probably too old for this game. And it turned out he had been quite a successful entrepreneur, but he was now retired, and he kind of wanted to give back and didn't know how to do it. So I said, no, look, this would be perfect for you. And he joined three small companies, three early stage companies within 3 months of joining the program. But what he did was every week he blogged about it on LinkedIn. So he just said, look, this is what I'm learning. And then he was sharing his learning, like, this is how I want to add value to these companies. And after the third month, an HR director for one of the S&P 500 companies, I can't tell you which one it was, but an S&P 500 company, one of the biggest in the world, reached out to him and said, look, we found your blog on LinkedIn. We love what you're doing. Would you like to come and sit on one of our boards? And it wasn't their main board. It was their second tier board. And he interviewed for it, and they offered him $168,000 a year to sit on that board. And he turned it down because he was already making more money and having more fun working with the three small companies. So all of that happened like literally 4 months from watching the webinar to, and look, fair play to him. He did everything that we suggest you do. And he had that entrepreneurial nous that he knew how he was able to monetize the situations that he got himself into. Yeah, we have career employees that come and have got some incredible board seats in a very short period of time. So it's a very inspiring network to be around. And obviously my day job, my main partnership is putting together mergers and acquisitions deals. And so if we can put a few thousand people onto boards around the world, that's quite a useful network for what we're doing in the day job as well. So yeah, it all kind of supports each other.
And what kind of company would you suggest, or who do you work with that should have a board? I mean, how big is the company? And is there any like a certain industry that they should be in or should not be in to have a board?
Look, if I'm starting a new company, the first thing I do is I pull together a board of advisors before I do anything else. I'll write a one pager on what I think the idea is, and then I'll go and find 3 or 4 people, and I'll say, hey, look, I'm thinking of doing this. Would you mind being on the board of advisors? I'll buy your coffee once a month and just ask you some questions on it. That's it. Then when I go to my first client and say, hey, I'm thinking about setting up this business, do you want to join the waiting list? By the way, I've already got these people, this guy from Microsoft and this guy from this company and this guy from this company on my board of advisors. It gives me massive credibility. And of course, they'll also give me ideas, and they'll say, look, this bit's good, but that bit will never work. And by the way, you should talk to this person. And yeah, so I genuinely think that every small business should have a board of advisors. I also think that any entrepreneur should sit on the board of somebody else's company. I think when you're an entrepreneur, you get so caught up in your own stuff, and you think that you're too busy to even think about anybody else's. But when you go and sit on the board of somebody else, you now have a responsibility to the stakeholders of that business. And it's the first time you have to think holistically about somebody else's business. And that's very healthy, because you see that actually they're dealing with a lot of the same problems that you're dealing with, but they're solving them slightly differently. And there's other cool people on the board, and you see how they handle that. And you take that information back, and your own business gets much, much stronger because of it.
Because these people, like you said, hey, let's just meet once a month. I'll buy you a coffee. The business owners technically, maybe they're buying the coffee, which says what, 5 to 10 US dollars, and that's their only investment. And it's kind of like, to me, it sounds like it's also kind of like a mastermind where you got outside people.
Yeah.
Or sharing their ideas with you about your business, and you could even they could be sitting on your board, and you could even possibly be sitting on their board.
Exactly. Yeah. Look, and look, actively advocate when you're starting on this journey, keep it as informal as possible. Don't worry about contracts. Don't get caught up in expectation. Like, just keep it very informal. But there's a big difference. So the way I pitch it to you is, hey, let's just connect for a coffee. I'll bring in some cool people. We can do it over Zoom. We can each buy our own coffee. That's fine. Just basically, I'm holding you accountable to what you said you're going to do, and if I can connect you to some cool people or give you some bits of advice, that's great. It's not the end of the world. But if I then go onto LinkedIn and update my profile, I'm now having monthly coffees with Kevin. Nobody's going to be impressed. But if I update my LinkedIn profile and say that I've now joined the board of directors for Kevin's new company, suddenly your network views you through a completely different lens. So if you've been, if you're an accountant sitting there and being overlooked for promotions for years, and then suddenly your team sees that you're now sitting on the board of advisors for a different company, it completely changes the way they think about you, because now somebody has offered you that responsibility that you're not getting internally. And what happens is, when you make that post on LinkedIn, it will probably be the most active post you ever make on LinkedIn. All of your network, oh, congratulations, I had no idea you're interested in this. Let me introduce you to this person. And by the way, like, I didn't even know that you could do this stuff. Like, I've got a company that you'd be really great for. And so many opportunities come once you get on the bottom rung of that ladder. And so, yeah, it's the whole sort of book and the whole course is all about making it really easy for people to get onto that bottom rung and then rapidly ascend it.
And I really like that idea, because one of the things I don't share very much on these podcast shows is that I do have a person that I talk to on Wednesday afternoons. He lives in Texas. I live in North Carolina, both in the U.S. And we call each other's accountability partners. But I can now see, like, well, he can actually now be part of my board of directors for my company, and I can be a board of advisors, not directors, for his company. And then it's just like, like you were just saying, bring on 2 or 3 additional people at the same time, or even at different times. I mean, now would you advise all the advisors come together in one group meeting, or do you still advise maybe even doing one-on-ones with each of them?
So generally speaking, I advise try and make it a monthly thing, because so you can still have your weekly accountability calls, but for the board, what part of it is that you're also trying to teach the business that you're on the rhythms of business. Oftentimes, especially young businesses and entrepreneurs, they're a little bit kind of all over the place. Pulled in every single direction. If you look at best practice of all big companies are governed by quarters and monthly reports and month end, and you're also trying to educate them on why this works, and you're a busy person. Like, you can't just drop everything when the founder calls you. So if I'm doing this, I'll say, okay, look, we've got 1 to 2 hours once a month. More than happy to help you in that time. If you need my help outside of that, that's a different conversation. I might need to charge you for that. But as an advisor, I'm more than happy to help you in this time. And that means that you're not kind of getting, nobody's exploiting the situation, or if they are, they're paying for it. So it keeps everyone honest.
And I'm glad that you're sharing that, because one of the things I thought about when we first started talking, or one of the things you started talking about the board of advisors, I was thinking the board of directors, and I'd see a big conference room, everybody wearing suits and stuff. Like, it doesn't have to be that way. It could be very, 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 or it could be on a Zoom call. It could be at a Starbucks or some other coffee shop.
Yeah, look, I mean, one of the and it can be international as well. That's the other thing. Like, one of the benefits of COVID was that most board meetings now happen on Zoom. I sit on boards all over the world with founders and with directors that I've never met in person. And the interesting thing is, as well, if in your local town, you're not much different from other people around you. Some of them may be better qualified, they may be more experienced. But if there's a startup in South Africa, for example, which has got some incredible amazing businesses right now, young population. To them, you're someone exceptional because you're from the US, you're from a market that they want to expand in. You've got a bunch of knowledge and contacts that they've never seen or heard before. Whereas to a company around the corner from you, what do you offer over everyone else within a 5 mile radius? So this is definitely it's time to start thinking globally as well, because there's so much opportunity, far more companies outside of the US than are in the US, and that's opportunities.
When they also, when we start dealing with companies outside the United States or outside of your own country, regardless of what country you live in, you'll get some very, in my opinion, great perspectives on how to do business, especially if you want to take your business international. Because if I had a board of directors or board of advisors, and I'm in North Carolina, so I've got another person in North Carolina, one person in Texas, one in South Carolina, and one in Alabama. That's still very narrow. I mean, that's just a regional thinking. Like, how do they know how to do business in Canada or in the UK or in Australia or in your country of Singapore? What do they know about that? And they're just not going to have that kind of. They're going to have a limited experience. So I like what you said there about, to definitely be considering being trying to building your board on a international basis.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of our clients, a gentleman called Ralph White from Atlanta, when he's a small business owner, he joined our program, and he said, look, I'd love to get onto the board of some bigger companies here in the US. And I said, well, it's probably easier to get you onto the board of a company in Europe or the Middle East or Asia first, and then leverage that to come back. And that's exactly what he did. So he ended up joining an apprentice board of a European publicly listed company. Did an incredible job for them. And then there's a sports and entertainment company in the US that went public. And because Ralph had done a bunch of very cool ESG reporting and things for this European company, and they'd heard about that, and they invited him to come and sit on the board of directors in the US. So exactly that, like, and they never would have heard of him otherwise. It was because he had that international experience that he became valuable to them. So yeah, it's funny how it works.
And so I know we're getting a little bit late on time. If somebody wanted to start their own board of directors, or somebody's saying, "Hey, I want to sit on somebody else's board of directors," how can they get the process started, or how can they get a hold of you so they can either buy one of your books or start to invest in one of your programs? How can the listener do that?
Well, I can't really sit on your podcast and say how willing I am to give everyone free copies and then try and sell them a copy of my book. So if your listeners go to the domain of my book, which is boardroom-blueprint.com, there's an opportunity for them to actually download a free copy once it goes live. So it's all there, and you can read all the reviews and everything else. But yeah, that's the best way. Or you can reach out to me on LinkedIn, mention this podcast, so I know to accept your connections. So Callum Laing at LinkedIn. I think I'm the only Callum Laing. Yeah, love to hear from people and see how we can help them.
Okay, so again, just to reiterate, you can find him on LinkedIn. His first name is Callum, Callum, last name Laing, Laing, and just mention Business Amplified, that you heard about this on Business Amplified podcast, and that he will know that because I'm sure he gets a free or connection requests all the time on LinkedIn. So at least by you putting the name of this podcast in your connection request, he knows that, hey, this is a person that listened to this show.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
then he also has a URL called boardroom, then the hyphen or the dash blueprint.com. So this, at the time of this recording, the book has not been released yet, but by the time you're listening to this recording, the book will be already released. So go ahead and just go to boardroom dash blueprint.com, and again, you can find him on LinkedIn. So Callum, any last things that you want to share with anybody before we go today?
No, I think, look, you started this call by talking about using books as a way to build authority. And I think generally, whether it's books or going on a podcast like this, everyone has unique experience. And one of the things I try and teach with the boardroom stuff is that people always focus on what they haven't got. But actually, there's a company out there today that would desperately love to connect with you, your background, your geography, your industry knowledge, because they don't have that. So I think once whether it's creating a book or going on podcasts or doing LinkedIn posts, start to build out your profile and let people know what you do. You'll be amazed how quickly it can magnify into something great.
And let's regress to the very beginning of this show. Where do you think you would have been if you never wrote that first book?
Well,
Do
I
you think
still
your life
harbor.
would have been completely skewed to another direction, or because that first book was your I call it a book is sometimes is a glorified business card. That's what helps you get into the door. So where do you think you would be if you had not written that first book?
Yeah, I mean, to me, the books are just sort of marketing and sales tools. My career is sort of building the businesses. It's definitely been helped by the book. I mean, personally, I still harbor ambitions of playing football in the Premiership, and if it wasn't for the fact I'm nearly 50, quite slow and lacking in any real talent, I think I would have a shot. But it doesn't stop me trying every weekend. Look, books are a very useful tool on the journey.
And I just want to make sure that our American audiences know that when he's talking about football, that is known as soccer in the
Soccer,
United
soccer.
States. So
Yeah,
it's a different. 'Cause he's 50 years old. He's playing football. He's not playing the wide end on a football team where people are tackling each other. This is actually a lot of running and a lot of moving around. So I just wanted to make sure our American listeners know what you're talking about.
I'm sure they do. Yeah, yeah. Good stuff.
Kala, it's been a great pleasure having you on the show. I think I'm going to once your next book comes alive, I would like to know more about even for myself. And as a small business coach, I never thought about having a board of advisors. So this is something that I would like to incorporate into my business. I hope that the listeners out there start to understand, like, hey, this is something you need to get started. And it seems like it doesn't matter what kind of business that you have. So you could be a solopreneur, you could have a restaurant, you could have a store, you could have an online business. All of these things that need
Yep.
that board of advisors. And I would say from my own personal experience, I've been living in Raleigh, North Carolina for about 2 years, but for 18 years I lived in Vegas. And pre-COVID, I used to go to a mastermind on a weekly basis, and that mastermind was kind of like a board of advisors. It was, I guess you'll call it an informal board of advisors because they weren't actually part of my company. But I know I contributed a lot to other people's businesses, and other people contributed a lot to my business. But going by what Callum's saying is you should actually formalize it. It doesn't have to be contracts or things like that, but it's going to be an understanding of people that are coming together to give you ideas of how you can be more effective in your business.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. Well, Callum, again, I want to say thank you for being on the show today. And
Yeah,
you
pleasure,
you
Kevin.
already, you already shared your last word. So everybody, I want to say thank you for listening to this podcast. And until next time, be amazing.
Sure.
Thanks for tuning in to another empowering episode of Business Amplified with Kevin A. Dunlap.
If you found value in today's insights, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and share the podcast.
Keep amplifying your business. And remember, your success journey is our inspiration.
Until next time on Business Amplified, go out there and make your business thrive.